Okay, William Wade and Christopher G. Moore, and we've been talking about creativity and the arts, and we've shared some ideas before, and I think now on camera we can share them again.
Sure.
For you, as one of the best saxophone players I've ever heard, you are able to transcend something in music. I'm not quite certain how to put that, but to create an emotional experience. When you're playing, it's more than just the instrument. There's something about you that's involved in that music that takes it to another level.
Mm-hmm.
Explain a little bit what it's like when you're in that space, in that zone.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is an image of myself from God knows how many years ago, my mother, I was the first child, I was the only child for 4 years, and my mom and dad would have parties occasionally, and I was curious, I would want to go out. And what they did is they got me a little radio, and they put it by, I was in it still in the crib, and I was hypnotized by music. I mean, there was a way that it just, I would be transfixed. And they would just turn the radio on. And
do you remember what the music was?
I remember I listened to country music at one point, and I remember it feeling sad. There was a guy named the Squeakin' Deacon who was a radio guy. And then there was another guy from he was in Mexico. He's broadcasting in Mexico, but he did rhythm and blues. I remember that as a very strong music. March music, when on Saturday mornings when they had a half an hour of John Philip Sousa, and I would march around the room for half an hour to the Sousa music. So it feels like there's some kind of biological connection or some kind of recognition as music, about music. And I've seen some children that have this.
Did really positive associations that put you in an emotional state of being secure or fun, all positive things as a child?
Well, it was interesting because the country music I remember as being sad.
Right.
So.
What about jazz? When did that first come into your consciousness?
Probably about the 5th and 6th grade. There was a guy named Happy Harold, and Happy Harold had a rhythm and blues show, and he was in a little mall, which was about 8 blocks from my house. And we had gone to the mall one afternoon to do some shopping, and there he sat. He was this heavy-set guy, and he was playing the music, and they had the speakers on the outside, and once again, it was just like one of these experiences. Wow, what is this? You know, and I had, at that point, this was like 50s, so it was essentially black rhythm and blues music. It was before Elvis, before you know the change, and I just fell in love with that music. And my mother, who had been a pianist, was really encouraging me to go into music. She tried to get me to have piano lessons at 4, and I was just too young. And then at 8, I began to play the clarinet. But the rhythm and blues had very definite jazz elements in it, so I see that as the beginning. And this was the summer of the 6th grade. I went to my first rhythm and blues dance. At that point, they were dances, and the musicians would play, and the people would dance.
When did you get your first saxophone?
I must have been 12 or 13.
Okay.
And I had been playing clarinet, which I didn't really care for. And when I first heard rhythm and blues, that was before the guitar explosion, and saxophone was the big deal.
Right.
So I got a saxophone and started a band when I was 15. Started playing And this guy, Happy Harold, had a barbecue place, and we'd play at his barbecue place, and then we'd go around and play for little teen dances and things like this. And this was just the beginning of the rhythm and blues era. So that was where it all got started.
So, do you associate then the creativity then with that musical experience from at a young age?
Yeah. When I was in my late teens, I had probably the biggest experience as far as both musical and life direction. I was playing in a blues bar in the town I was from, and the way it was set up is there's a little bandstand which was about 1.5 feet high, and right in front of the bandstand there was a dance floor. Mm-hmm. And one Saturday night we were playing, this was rhythm and blues, so it's very strong, very emotional rhythmic music. And we were playing along, and it's about the middle of the evening, and the place was totally packed. It was just packed with people, and they were dancing. It was a bar, it was a black bar, very high energy. And I was playing, and I started to take a solo, and it felt like my hands merged with my saxophone. It felt like this. Somehow they merged together, and I couldn't tell the difference. And that feeling continued, and I merged totally with the saxophone, and then with the music itself.
Sure.
And which was a pretty interesting experience, to say the least. But that continued, and I merged with the whole room. So I felt as if my consciousness was that room. And
so it really expanded your sense of who you were through the music.
I became myself, the saxophone, the sound, the music, and the room. So
and did you read the people around you as somehow connecting to that, or at least some connecting?
I wasn't there anymore. There wasn't a William. I was the whole room. It was an ego loss experience. So there wasn't an observer anymore. I was the experience.
How did that change your playing afterwards?
I don't know that it really changed my playing that much at that point, because I was still developing technically, but it changed my opinion about reality, and it started me on a quest as far as, I got off the bandstand, and I was young. It was like late teens. And the rest of the band were older blues musicians. Yeah. And I got off the bandstand, and the guitar player, who was maybe in his 50s, was there, and I said, "Hey, what happened?" Yeah. He looked at me and he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, when we melted into our instruments, and then into the music, and then into the room, and I'm trying to figure out what went on. And he said, "Boy, what have you been smoking?" And this was before I knew anything about drugs.
Sure.
But, that experience just opened a door that a lot of people later in the 60s talked about psychedelics opening those doors for them. But this was that kind of opening. And it just made me question and wonder, what's going on? Who am I, and what's going on? And I started reading more, and hypnosis, and looking into psychology, third state